I'm Bonnie Fillenwarth, and I guess I was picked because I minored in classical studies. So I know all about this crazy Greek mythology stuff. I got interested in it when I was in like 6th grade and was adamantly trying to figure out like which Greek goddess am I, which is very problematic, especially for a middle schooler. So I've got some slides here. Let me get this going. Then, oh, it's still on the thing. Okay. It's so quiet with just me talking. I'm not used to it. Okay. This is Wonder Woman Academy. This is Greek Gods 101. Greek mythology is like hugely vast, and the stories vary a lot. Like they change their minds on like everything. So it's really hard to just do like Greek gods and not, here's all the crazy fun stuff from Greek mythology that I know about. And I just realized I forgot to do one thing, but that's okay. Oh, spacebar didn't work. Uh-oh. Oh, that worked. Whatever. I think it skipped one. No. Okay. So there's a family tree in Greek mythology, but it changes a lot depending on what story it is. Like Aphrodite, sometimes she's at the very top because she's the goddess of love, and you can have people born if they don't like love each other. So it makes sense that she would be at the top. But then she's also sometimes, I don't know, she's stuck in there. Same thing with Eros, which is sometimes her kid, sometimes it's not. It's crazy. So you got kind of at the top, Gaia and Uranus, which are kind of earth and sky. They're born out of just the chaos of the universe. And then you get kind of the Titans with Cronos and Riss, and they make Cyclopses, 100-handers, like all these kinds of different like monsters. And then you get kind of the Olympians, which kind of do an uprising there with Hera and Zeus and Hades, kind of the normal people we're used to talking about. And all of those guys. And these slides are mostly notes for me to remember what I'm talking about. So you don't need to like take notes or anything. Okay. So in Greek mythology, there's like several themes that happen like all the time. Jealous gods pretty much do not brag that you are better than a god to do anything because it will turn out very badly for you. And it's usually like really, really bad. A lot of people are fated to do things, and there's just no escaping fate. It's just, you're stuck with it. I put down wild babies. There's a whole lot of just leaving babies out in the woods as like, I don't know if it's a form of like abortion or whatever. They're like, I don't want this baby. I'm just going to put it on the edge of the woods and it'll be fine. So there's some like heroes, especially the founders of Rome. Romulus and Remus are kind of the most famous ones. They were left out in the woods and then raised by a wolf. So there's a nice sculpture of them sucking at a wolf's teat out there. There's lots of violence, rape. I don't know, you can kind of dumb down some of the stories for little kiddos, but they're not very kid appropriate. So if you have little kiddos, you may not want them to get into it right away. Let's see. So yeah, in the beginning, there is Uranus and Gaia, which is earth and sky. They pretty much have the babies, which makes all the Titans. It's like a whole bunch of little monster dudes. And then in the family tree there's a whole bunch of like incest going on because there's only 2 people. So, and it's just, it's fine. They're gods. They don't seem to really care. Cronos, which is a lovely painting by Goya here, he heard that his kids would overthrow him. So he decided he was going to solve this by eating them. So he ate a whole bunch of his kiddos to prevent them from overthrowing him like he did with his father. So that's lovely there. Zeus ended up, he was one of the last ones born. They decided that they were going to hide him from Cronos because he just kept eating everybody. So they had him born in like a secret cave thing, and then they hid him away. And when Cronos like came to, was like I know you've been pregnant, I know you got a baby, give me the baby. They switched him out with a rock, and so he ate the rock, and Zeus survived and dethroned him and set everything back to like not normal, but no longer eating babies. Zeus is kind of the king of the gods. He is like the god of justice and law. He is also the biggest, what do you call it, adulterer ever, which I think is pretty funny with his wife being the goddess of marriage. So it's not good. But he is all kinds of, like, he will screw anything and everything, and he often turns himself into like animals so he can have sex with these ladies. There's Ion Europa, there's cows involved in those. Ganymede is a young boy. He turns himself into an eagle so he can get Ganymede. Danae, he turns himself into, what was it? There was a king and his wife Danae. The king heard that his son is going to overthrow him, so he locked his wife away in a box. So that was not going to happen. Zeus came to her in the form of a golden shower to impregnate her, and that is the origin of, I forget if it's Theseus or Perseus. That's one of those two guys. And then Leda is one of the ones that I think is the most ridiculous, is the swan here. Zeus saw Leda, thought she was just so pretty, and decided to turn himself into a swan so he could seduce her. I don't care how pretty a swan is, that ain't happening. But there's all kinds of paintings and sculptures and stuff of this naked lady with a swan, and it's weird. Let's see, do we get this? He had so many affairs. This one affair, and I forget who the lady is, but it ends up with spawning Hercules. And Hera is just fed up. She's so pissed at this. She like curses Hercules, like Heracles, because it's like Hera's cursed. But she just like harasses him his whole life. When he's born, she sends little snakes to kill him, and he's little baby, and little baby Hercules just like strangles the snakes. When he's an adult, he she like makes him go mad, and the whole reason why he does his 12 labors is because he kills his wife and children in like a mad rage. So we think of it as him being like this great, awesome hero, but he murdered his family. So, yeah. Let's see. At one point, they decided they were going to divide up the different realms. So Zeus gets kind of like Earth and rules Olympus. Hades gets the underworld, and Poseidon gets the sea. Let's see here. We've got Demeter, who is the mother of Persephone. Demeter is the goddess of like the harvest. So it's very important to the ancient Greeks to have a good harvest. And Persephone is her daughter. And I don't remember if it's something that just happened one day, and there could be multiple versions of the story too, because that happens all the time. Or if Zeus and Hades just made a deal where Hades was going to get to marry Persephone, and they didn't really tell anybody. But one day, Hades just pops up and just snatches Persephone, takes her down to the underworld. There's a whole thing where, you know, you're not allowed to eat food in the underworld because then you can never come back. And ends up, she eats a pomegranate, or sometimes it's an apple. So they somehow make an arrangement where she stays in the underworld part of the time in like the winter season, and then comes back up in the spring and summer, and that's how we get the seasons. But yeah, Hades is the ruler of the underworld, and the Greeks didn't really like everyone went to the underworld. It wasn't really like a heaven or hell situation. There's multiple stories of people going to the underworld to try and bring people back from the underworld, so back to life. And it's just not a real pleasant place. It seems like it's just dark, and there's just souls everywhere. And there's the three-headed dog. I wanted to say Hubris. That's not right. Cerberus. And my little help here. Yeah. So that's a common quest for heroes to do, is to go to the underworld to get things. Artemis and Apollo are son and daughter twins from Zeus and Leto. Artemis is the goddess of the hunt. She's a virgin goddess. She's mistress. She's not so much like friends to the animals. It's more like they're hunting animals. So she's not really going to protect the animals, but if you want a good hunt, you would pray to Artemis. At one point, Niobe was a woman who she had like 12 kids or something, and she was going around bragging that she's just so great. She was able to give birth to 12 kids, and Leto over there has only got 2 kiddos, so she's just so much better than Leto. So Leo sends Artemis and Apollo to murder all of her kids. They both have bows and arrows. They shoot them down and murder her children. Actaeon was a guy who came across Artemis like bathing nude, and even though it was an accident, it's not forgivable. She ended up turning him into a deer, stag, and his dogs hunted him down and ate him. Apollo is the sun god. He'll go across the sky in his golden chariot. He's also the god of medicine. And there's a big story with him with Daphne, who was a nymph, and she's just minding her business. And Apollo sees her and is like, oh my gosh, I've got to have that. So he pursues her. She's like, no. She's running and fleeing, trying to get away from this dude. She calls out to the gods to help her. They end up turning her into a tree. She's the laurel tree. And at the end of the day, he claimed the laurel tree as his tree. So it's not so good. So it's all the place in art. It's a common thing that people will do, and it's like, it's a pretty story. She's a tree. It's like, no, it's not a good story. None of them are really all that happy. Athena is the goddess of wisdom and war. She was born. She just sprung out of Zeus's head, fully armored, like an adult, and was like, I'm here. She has an owl. One lady, Arachne, was bragging that she had just these great weaving skills, and Athena challenged her. and Athena won because she's also like the goddess of weaving. And Athena punished her for bragging and turned her into a spider, and that's how we get spiders. She is the patron goddess of Athens. When Athens was becoming a city, they were trying to decide if they wanted to have Athena or Poseidon be their patron god, and Athena ended up winning. Poseidon wanted to give them horses. I forget what Athena gave them, but he's somehow both the god of the sea and horses. I don't know how that happened. But Athena is kind of the god of like wisdom. She's like battle strategy. She's like the nice clean side of war. And this statue is, I think, a copy of the one that's inside the Acropolis here. Athens pretty much had all their wealth poured into the statue. The gold was melted down, and that was like their treasury. Get out of here. Okay. Aphrodite and Hephaestus. Aphrodite is the Greek goddess of love, and this is my favorite statue of her. I think it has an Italian name, but it translates to like Aphrodite of the buttocks, because it's so ridiculous. I love it. But yeah, she's probably the most painted goddess ever. But she was born out of the sea, and there's like 3 different versions of it. I think the most common one is when Cronos was taking over for his father's kingdom for Uranus. He castrated him because that's what you do. And he just like threw his nutsack into the sea. And Aphrodite was born out of like the sea foam mixture of that. So she's like the famous Botticelli painting where she's riding in on like a giant seashell. But yeah, so there's that. Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, and he is like the blacksmith of the Olympians. He makes Zeus's thunderbolts. He's the only one that has like a skill. He's also the lame god. So he's like either really ugly, has broken legs, something. He's some kind of defective. Zeus, I guess, felt bad for him, had him marry Aphrodite. Aphrodite being the goddess of love, cheats on him all the freaking time. At some point, one of her frequent lovers is Ares, the god of war. So you've got love and war coming together is a thing. At one point, Hephaestus like do about this was like sick and tired of her shit, set up a trap where he had their bed rigged with a net. So when they came together in the bed, they were caught under this net that they couldn't get out of, and he had all the other Olympians come and look to like shame them. And that's what this painting is. And for those of you in Indianapolis, this painting's actually in the Indianapolis Museum of Art. I want to go see it. There's the golden apple story where Zeus is having a big old party, does not invite Eris, which is like the goddess of like chaos. She gets mad, decides she's just gonna just send them a gift of this golden apple, and the little like gift tag said "to the most beautiful." Zeus is like, I'm not touching that. So he gives it to Paris, who's a human mortal, and both Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite show up, and they're like, well, obviously we're the most beautiful. Like you got to pick one. So Hera, to sweeten the pot, was like, I will make you king of like Europe and Asia, and you'll just rule everybody. Athena says she's going to give him like wisdom in battle. She's like, you can conquer your enemies. Aphrodite says she will give him the most beautiful woman in the world, which happens to be Helen of Troy, who's already married. And that's the one that Paris picked, and that started the Trojan War. Ares is the god of war. He is more of like the brute force, like the strength, the like animalistic side of war, like the blood rage. Out of him and Aphrodite, they have kiddos, and there's Phobos and Deimos, which are it's fear and like malice or something like that, which are also, since we have all the planets named after Greek gods, those are the two moons of Mars, are Phobos and Deimos. And then there's also Harmonia, which is harmony. And then some stories say there's also Eros, which is like erotic love. But some of them have him pop up in the very beginning. So who knows? Let's see. Poseidon is the god of sea and horses. I forgot to write down Medusa origins with that, because I forgot to read up on that. I'm pretty sure it's something like there's the three Gorgon sisters, and something happens where he curses them, and someone comes in and murders her two sisters, even though they're like immortals, chops off her heads, and just Medusa's left. And she's pretty mad. And they make Medusa out to be this giant monster. She got her sisters murdered in front of him. I think they pissed off Poseidon, and I can't remember what they did. He's got a big beef with Odysseus in the Odyssey. So part of the Odyssey is Odysseus is fighting in the Trojan War, and he's trying to get home, and it takes him 10 years to do it. One of the stops that they make early on is they land on an island that's got a bunch of sheep, and they're like, great, because we're hungry. So they start, eating the sheep, and all those sheep are owned by a cyclops called Polyphemus, and they end up he traps them in like his cave along with a bunch of his sheep, and to like hide, the guy is like skin sheep, because that doesn't take a while, and like pull the fleece over them, and they're crawling around trying to pretend to be sheep, and they blind him, so they can't really see. So he's trying to like feel around, and he's like, like, I know these guys are in here, I'm gonna eat them, and they can't find him. So they blind him. They eventually go out, they figure out how to open the door, they run out, they get back to their ship. At some point, the guy's like yelling, like, who are you? What are you doing? Odysseus ends up telling him that he is, and I forget what the word is, but it translates to nobody. So when the Cyclops gets out there and he's yelling at all of his other Cyclops buddies, like, oh, I've been blinded, this guy did this to me, and they're like, who? And he ends up saying, nobody. So Poseidon hears about this, and that's like one of his babies or something, and he gets pissed. So he curses Odysseus, and that's why it takes him 10 years to get home, because he keeps sending him off, and there's like a storm every time they get in the ship, and blows him off course. Hermes is the god, he's the messenger god. He's super fast, which is also why he's the planet closest to the sun. He's also a trickster god, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense if he's the messenger god, because are you going to really believe him? He's one of the only gods where we have a little story about when he is like younger. Most of the gods, when they're born, it's just pretty much they get born and then they're adults. Like, you don't hear about them like growing up at all. There is a hymn to Hermes where they talk about like him getting into mischief. At some point he steals Apollo's cattle, and Apollo's like, dude, you need to come back. And he's like, I don't know you. He's like, I'm just a baby. I don't know what cattle are. I don't know what you're talking about. One of my favorite little bits is he invents the lyre, which is also Apollo's thing. He's the god of music. So Apollo's not all that thrilled about Hermes creating the lyre, which is pretty much like a guitar. It's a stringed instrument with kind of like a bowl. But how Hermes invents the guitar is or the lyre is he comes across a turtle. And this part of this is, good morning to you, my omen of luck, who I must not disparage. How fair your face, how nimble your feet, what fun at a party. And this is him talking to the turtle. How happy I am to see you. Pray, where did you get your fine costume? That dappled shell looks like a tortoise who lives in the hills. Let me pick you up and take you inside, where I'm sure I can use you. You will be treated with all respect, since first you will benefit me. You'll be safer inside the house, for the outdoors is always a danger. Where you live, you will be in my defense against perils of magic, and should you happen to die, you will warble in the loveliest music. So he picks him up, takes him inside, and gets him and turns him into a lyre. A lyre, the musical instrument, not like a lying lyre. Which I think is hilarious that he's like seducing this turtle first. But I think that is my last slide there. So that was just kind of my basic overview of the Greek gods. I haven't checked to see if there's any questions or anything.